Good morning, Assalamu alaikum. This is Alight School, Noshaya campus. We are again here for our biology class 9 today. Our today's topic is tissues because we have done with our last topic, which was transport ways of molecules into and out of the cell. So tissues, then plant tissues and simple tissues, and finally meristematic tissues are today's topic. So first of all, do anyone have any idea about tissue, what a tissue is? So before starting, I think we should know what the cell is. So do you know what the cell is? Cell is the basic structural and functional unit of life. This means for formation of anything and for functionality of anything, of a living organism or in a living organism, totally depends on cell. If there is no cell, we cannot say there will be any life, right? There are many organisms which have only one cell. But there are majority of the organisms which have lots of cells, even billions of cells, within billion range. So the organism which have only one cell, they are called as unicellular organism. Those organisms which have many cells, they are called as multicellular organism. Do you remember? Then in unicellular organism, we have an example of bacteria. In multicellular organism, we have many examples of, we may take it as plants. Let's take it plants, animals, human beings, etc. So what happens, no matter if an organism has only one cell or if it has many cells, it can perform various activities of its life. For example, if it is the case of bacteria, so bacteria can reproduce more and quickly as compared to plants and animals. But plants and animals can also reproduce, right? So bacteria do not actually reproduce, but they divide themselves into other bacteria. So one bacteria can make hundreds of bacteria more. It removes itself, it distors itself, it kills itself, and then it generates many other bacteria, which is called as cell division. So as it has only one cell, so that one cell is then divided into hundreds of cells, and then one bacteria forms 10 cells, more bacteria, 100 more bacteria, same, right? So, and when we are talking about plants or animals, what happens here? Each cell is responsible for a different function. For example, for transfer of messages or impulse, nerve cell is responsible, right? Similarly, for movement of body parts, muscle cells are required or are responsible. For, we can say, for formation of blood, blood cells are required, obviously. So, and each of the cell performs its own function, right? But now, what if I say that suppose it's my stomach. So, if my stomach is working, so how do it works? Because all the work of the body is performed by brain. So the brain sends signals to it, right? This means that stomach, which is an organ, brain is also an organ. But brain has nerve cells. And these nerve cells, many of the nerve cells combine together and they make nerve tissues, right? And then those tissues, those cells come and they attaches to the stomach organs. And so whenever the brain sends message to the stomach that yes, now you have to eat, so it works. You don't have to eat, so it stops its work, and then we say that my stomach is upset, right? Similarly, if you look at the outer layer of the stomach, so obviously the stomach is not as opened, but it has a membrane, right, or a layer outside. So that layer is also, we do know that the layer or the outer covering of the skin or of any living organism, that is what? That is epidermal cells or epidermal tissues. So these epidermal tissues have been provided to the stomach. That's why it's working. Similarly, stomach cannot work if a proper blood do not reach there. So blood cells do come and do give them blood, right? So all these cells, cell alone cannot work. Cell alone cannot work. It only can make the blood. But then many of the cells combine together and perform a simple function, a same function, similar function, and then we call them, it's what? This is tissue. So what would be the exact definition of the tissue? The exact definition of the tissue would be a group of cells. Of which cells? A group of cells which perform a common function is called what? Tissues. Tissue, right? So tissue is nothing but this is the combination of cells. Of which cells? Of those cells which perform a common function. For example, transport of blood or formation of blood. Then these blood cells are known as blood tissues. These epidermal cells are known as epidermal tissues because they are performing same function, right? Okay, but in case of bacteria, as the whole work or the whole process of the body, whatever its body requires, that is done by a cell alone. So it doesn't depend on other cells for its working. So it do not make tissue, right? Alright, then cells are of different types, tissues are of different types, and our first topic is about plant tissues. So what would be the definition of plant tissue? That's a quite childish question, but its simple answer is those tissues or the group of cells which perform a common function in plants is called plant tissue, right? And then plant tissues are divided into two main categories. One is simple tissues and the other is compound tissues. Okay. So simple tissue are those tissues which are made up of only one type of cells, whereas compound tissues are those tissues which are made up of more than one type of cells. Right? Our today's topic is simple tissues. And in these simple tissues, let me give you an example of simple tissues. Epidermal tissues. Epidermal tissues are those which are at the outer covering, or if we are talking about human body, so that is a layer or skin layer, right? So epidermal tissues are type of simple tissues. Except them, we are having what? We are having apical. We can say meristems, but now this meristem word would be new for you. So let's come to start our today's topic, and this topic is that the meristematic tissues. Meristematic tissue is one of the type of simple tissues. So simple tissues have two main types. First type is meristematic tissues. Meristematic tissues are also called as embryonic tissues. I'll tell you why do we call them embryonic tissues. And the other are called as permanent tissues, right? So what's the case? The case is simple tissues are further classified into two main tissues, meristematic tissues and permanent tissues. Our today's topic is meristematic tissues. So meristematic tissues are also known as embryonic tissues. Why? So the answer is they are called as embryonic tissues because they have the ability to divide and redivide. To divide and redivide into new cells or into new tissues. For example, it's a tree or it's a plant, right? When we give it water, the plant absorbs it. Obviously, it has to absorb. So the plant will ultimately, after some time, after some days, it will grow. From where do it grow? From where do the plant grow? Do it grow from this portion? Obviously no, never. The plant grows from the top, from this portion. It goes in upward direction. Similarly, in which direction and from where do the roots grow? The roots grow from the end of the root tips, from this portion, right? So, and they are towards downside. Okay. So, this portion or the top is known as apex. Okay. And the word apical meristem, I use this word over here, apical meristem has been taken from apex. So that meristem or those tissues which are present at the apex or at the top of the stem and at the top of the roots are called as apical meristems. And these apical meristems are types of meristematic tissues, right? What is their function? Their function is to divide and redivide and elongate the plant. Where? At the roots and at the shoot, top of the shoot, right? But do the plant only grows taller and deeper, or do it gains with the time, with the duration, it gains a bit thickness? Yes, it becomes, first it is quite narrow, and then slowly, steadily it becomes a thick tree, right? So this means that the plant also grows from left to right or in the circular way as well. So that is the outer covering of the plant. This is called as lateral. Lateral means sidewise. So the plant can grow sidewise as well, and these sidewise growths provide it to gain what? To gain thickness. And how do the plant thicken? That is because of the presence of lateral meristems, right? So we have two types of meristematic tissues are then further classified into two types. Number one are apical meristems. Apical meristems are located at the apex of shoot and roots. Meristem. And we call them as primary, this growth. When it grows taller and deeper, we call this growth as primary growth. So you can say that apical meristem is responsible for the primary growth of a plant, whereas the lateral meristem is responsible for the secondary growth. Okay. So that's all for today. What you have to do, you have to read and understand tissues and simple tissues carefully. Let us give a quick revision to our tissues. We said plant tissues are divided into two main types, simple tissues and compound tissues. Our topic was in simple tissues, and that is meristematic tissue. But we said that simple tissues are categorized into two types, meristematic and permanent tissues. Meristematic tissues are further divided into two types as well. They are apical meristems, which is responsible for primary growth, and lateral meristem, which is responsible for secondary growth. I hope the topic is clear to every person. In this diagram would also be clear to you. It's apical meristem, that is at the apex or at the top of the shoot. This is root or apical meristem at the top or at the root tip, right? And that is lateral meristem, gives it thickness. So that's all for today. Have a good day ahead. Bye bye. Take care. Stay home. Stay safe.